Hey guys, welcome back, it's Ripe again. In today's title story, my bosses framed and fired me for theft, but I am innocent and the entire company gets shut down. Here is my epic revenge. Our title story starts like this. I used to work at a very popular holiday park on the south coast of England, cleaning out the caravans and toilets. It was not the most glamorous job, but it suited me to a T. The housing manager and subsequent supervisors were really good people and let us get on with the job so as long as the vans were cleaned during changeover. I loved this job because I could spend the day on my own, doing my work and never have to interact with people. I'm not big on socializing and would rather be left on my own to do my work. Another great thing about it was that there was a lot of downtime, so I could concentrate a fair bit on becoming a decent writer and get my first book published. It also helped that I got on really well with the housing manager. He was an old boy and me and my workmate Sam, because everyone needs a Sam, would do anything for him. We were his go-to people when he needed work doing about the park and needed a couple guys he could trust. The supervisor was a woman called Kara. She was amazing and took no crap from anyone. The great thing about her being the super was that she spent all her time in the laundry room, doing the laundry, organizing the bedding for the caravans, cottages and camping pods. That sort of thing. So we were basically unsupervised and could do whatever we wanted, so as long as the work got done to a high standard. However, there was this one guy, Chris, whose son worked the chippy down in the coastal village, so we would get free chips once or twice a week. There were other people there as well that were all sound, and we pretty much were a close-knit team that looked out for each other. All with the exception of these pair of Karens. This one Karen, we will call Tall Karen, believed that she should be the housing manager, despite the fact that she couldn't organize a piss-up in a brewery. She was the supervisor for the cottages. Any time that I worked for her, things were just an absolute chaotic mess. Every time we did changeover, things were always done right on the button. She would disappear halfway through the day because she was never organized enough to have the equipment we needed to get the cottages cleaned in time for changeover. Everything she did was always done in such a panic, it's a wonder her head didn't explode from all the stress she poured onto herself. Just as I had my Sam, Tall Karen had Little Karen. She was what we English affectionately call a poisoned dwarf, which is basically a term used for anyone under 5'8" and had an attitude like they wanted to fight the world. She hated everyone except for Tall Karen, and she only liked Tall Karen because Tall Karen let her do whatever she wanted and backed her up when needed, which was normally getting everyone else into trouble. Sam really hated Little Karen, to the point where I was pretty sure they were absolute enemies. Everything Little Karen did or said was always directed at discrediting Sam and anyone associated with Sam, which was basically the entire housing team. Anything and everything that went wrong within the housing team, Little Karen would instantly blame it on Sam. She'd go crying to the housing manager, and naturally Tall Karen would back up Little Karen no matter what it was. The housing manager, being a sound bloke, would listen to both parties and if necessary take it up with the park manager, who we will call Candace for this. Most of the time there wouldn't be enough evidence to back up Little Karen's claims, and we would go our separate ways with a warning to behave. The worst thing was, no one was willing to address the fact that Little Karen and Tall Karen were basically bullying the rest of the housing team. Candace was adamant in presenting the housing team as this close-knit family where everyone got along, which we did for the most part, until Tall Karen and Little Karen got involved. Because the park manager wanted to project this image, the housing manager did the same. He was an old boy after all, and he just wanted to cruise the rest of his work life up until retirement. What didn't help was that Tall Karen was so desperate for the housing manager's position, she did everything she could to paint old boy in a bad light, which never worked because he had the rest of the housing team backing him up. Tall Karen and Little Karen's escapades went as far as driving around in their little electric van, spying on the rest of us. They even skulked around Sam's house, who lived in the village where the holiday park was located. Sam got really distraught about this but refused to go to the park manager, so I went for him. So the thing is, all the vans recently got trackers on them, so it was easy to find out where everyone went and when. The park manager checked this out and did indeed find that the Karens had frequently passed Sam's house. They got called in and we all thought that was it. They were rumbled, and if they didn't get fired, they would at least be warned to stay away from the rest of us. No such luck though. They had some pitiful excuse about how they were cleaning a house behind Sam's house. We would do that from time to time. The whole area was covered under the same estate, some lord that owned pretty much the whole south coast area, including artillery ranges and exercise areas for the military, the whole holiday village, holiday park and surrounding areas. So when a tenant moved out, it was the housing team, namely the Karens, who went out to clean the houses for the next tenant. They got away with spying on Sam because they were cleaning the house behind his and because Candace wanted to maintain the illusion that we were all one close-knit family. She accepted their excuse. This was not the extent of their malicious attacks either. When we came back into business after the whole pandemic shut down, we had a couple new starters join the housing team. They were a couple of young, loud and boisterous people, and even I was feeling a bit out of sorts whenever they were around, but only because they were too loud for my liking. Little Karen, as much as she hated Sam and me, really despised these new starters, mainly for the fact that they refused to put up with her crap and swore more than was necessary. It wasn't like they were walking around the park effing and blinding. They understood that being out and about, you had to show a little professional decorum. Now bear in mind that we did nothing to little Karen and tall Karen. If they came into the restroom, we would give them their space and stick to our own business. When the Karens spoke to us, we would listen to them, though look for any excuse to not do what they asked of us. They took this and compiled a huge list of misdemeanors, which included exaggerating actual events and claiming they were being bullied. Several of the housing team was put in their crosshairs, including the new kids Sam and Chris. I managed to avoid their ire out of fact that I always quietly sat in the corner. Like I said before, I was not big on the socializing, especially when the company are overly boisterous and loud. It all turned into this huge thing, with everyone having to make witness statements, character references, HR hearings, and all sorts. Everyone pretty much got fired or were suspended for a time. I put in a report to the lord who owned the estate, who had the final say on everything, and through that, most of the people got their jobs back under probation. All with the exception of this one girl who properly kicked off at the management team for being such blind dinguses. I don't blame her, they were. This put me firmly in the bad graces of tall Karen and little Karen though. My days were numbered and it was only a number of time before my world would come crashing down. Now, anytime I did anything, tall Karen and little Karen were adamant in twisting what I was doing into something I wasn't supposed to be doing. For instance, Old Boy wanted me to keep track of housing expenses right down to how much money it would cost to wash a single sheet or pillowcase. I was doing this every week for about 3 months and had set up a whole Excel spreadsheet. So when changeovers happened, I only had to put in if it was a single, double or whatever, and the costs would be calculated and I would send that off. Well, tall Karen came in the office one evening expecting to find Old Boy, but instead she saw me sitting at the computer. She disappears off as soon as she notices that I'm sat at the computer. About half an hour later, the park manager comes in and asks me what I was doing. I tell her I'm doing the expenses for the week. That was the end of that. Candace tells me that I should not be doing that work and that I should be out cleaning a caravan. I knew full well that tall Karen had gone off and told Candace some bull crap story about me wasting time on the computer, and that was that. There was another time where I borrowed an estate vehicle when my own car was in for an MOT. I asked Candace if I was alright to borrow the van for the day, and she said it was fine. Lil Karen spied me heading home in the company vehicle and kicked it all off. Bearing in mind that little Karen never drove herself anywhere and would always demand that Old Boy send someone out to pick her up from her home in the village, it was often the case that those who worked for the estate got first dibs on renting. When Candace told her that I'd been given clearance to use a company vehicle while my car was in for an MOT, little Karen did not like this one bit and reported it to the lord of the estate, and he ended up putting an end to the whole borrowing of company vehicles for personal errands. That did not stop little Karen and tall Karen from using their company vehicle to run their own errands. However, each time Sam or myself reported this, we were completely ignored. Absolutely typical. So now my name is in the stirring pot and the Karens are desperate to get rid of me, and that way they can get rid of Sam and have the run of the housing department. Why they want it so bad is beyond me, but I'm just about at my wit's end with this behavior and the constant turning of the blind eye. I was not in the best light with the management to begin with. My daughter just started a new school, and as a result my daughter kept getting sick, and even though me and the wife would take turns in taking time off work to look after her, I was still having to take more than a few days off work to look after my daughter. It did not help that I slipped up on a loose paving slab at work and twisted my ankle, putting me out of action for a couple days. And then, to top it off, just as I got over the twisted ankle, I was gallivanting about my garden and twisted my ankle all over again. So that was another couple days off. It reached a point where HR called me in and had a chat with me about my absence. I had to explain myself, which I did, and even got the school to corroborate. I showed them the pictures of my ankle I took, and when I messaged old boy to let him know I was going to be out of action for a couple days. Not a day goes by where I don't wish I had sued the estate when I went over on a loose paving slab there and then, instead of waiting as long as I did. This is all apparent because the lord of the estate had no tolerance towards people who called in sick, like none at all. Even one sick day will put you in his bad graces, too, and he will start looking for a way to legally get you fired, any slip up at all. I was walking a tight rope, and it was only a matter of time before I would get caught out because of Lil Karen and Tall Karen. If it wasn't for them too, I would have been fine, I guess. I would have been able to keep my head down, get my work done, and redeem myself. As it so happens, I was not so lucky. One day I was down for late starts all week, which was often the case as old boy needed someone to stay late to keep an eye on the facilities, which would not close until 6 in the evening. I did not mind staying behind, so anyway, on this late start, instead of coming into the park, I was due to meet up with a cleaning team at the local pub where we cleaned the pub facilities every Tuesday and Thursday before it opened. On the way in, I get a message from the team asking me to run through the park and get some more toilet paper, and then they ask me to get more polish and then get some Hoover bags. Well, I'm in my own car as I'm driving into work, and now that you know what Tall Karen and Lil Karen are like, I bet you can guess what happened next. They catch me dumping a huge bag of toilet paper, several cans of polish, and a box of Hoover bags into the boot of my car. Well, they assumed 1 + 1 = thief and immediately ran to Candace to report my supposed larceny. I get about an hour into my work when old boy calls me up and tells me to meet him at the estate office, which was located on the castle grounds. I had no idea what was coming. We met up with HR, who tell me that I'm suspended until an investigation can be conducted into my theft of company property, and I'm confused, lost and worried. I ask my Sam for backup, and he tells me that he cannot help me because he didn't want to bring any negative attention onto himself, especially after what the Karens pulled last time. I get pulled into an HR meeting about 2 weeks later, where they inform me that there is irrefutable CCTV footage showing me putting company property in my car. I am furious and tell them what it was for, and even had character statements from the cleaning team, but they don't care about that. I get to appeal the decision about a week later, which I do, but I'm far out of luck because the person sitting in is not a HR rep but some random guy who does the property estimates. He assures me that he is well versed in scrutinizing and examining paperwork, but I know he has already made his decision. I know that the lord of the estate has told him not to go ahead with the appeal, and no surprise, I get a letter telling me that the decision to fire me stands. These dirtbags legit framed me for theft and want to fire me over it. I spent a couple of days raging and fuming, and once I calmed down, I contacted legal aid and began the proceedings to investigate this misconduct. I knew it was a long shot because the lord of the estate used to be a lawyer, so I know he probably has my sacking airtight, but I have one card I can play. I sue him for the time I sprained my ankle on a loose paving stone. What I didn't realize was that this was gonna have the domino effect of getting the whole holiday park shut down because it was far from health and safety in general. We all knew the lord of the estate cut as many corners as he could to spend the least amount of money as possible. Our restroom was in an old shower block with only one exit, which was pretty much blocked by the restroom table. All the caravans were falling apart and had black mold growing all over the place. The park areas broke all kinds of code violations. The trees were protected, but that didn't stop them from hammering bolts into them to secure the equipment. In the end, I got the lord of the estate fined so much money and inspection teams found so much wrong with the park that he had to close it down for well over a year. Afterwards, he had no choice but to sell it on. The Karens might have gotten what they wanted, but at a price they were not expecting. The holiday park was bulldozed and replaced by a Center Parks. And here, Ripe Stars, that is what being super petty and annoying and trying to bully others at your workplace can lead to. And yes, the Karens got what they deserved, OP got fired indeed, but in the end the entire company shut down and everyone lost their job. So next time you're not nice to your work colleague, maybe think of something like this. Anyway, if you enjoyed this XXL revenge story, then please don't forget to like the video and maybe even post a comment to boost my video in the algorithm. Thank you so much, your help is very much appreciated. Anyway, the next one is a payday revenge story. It starts like this. So I just resigned from my job, small company, because my manager would not pay me on time. He would avoid me on payday and I would have to seek him out and ask why he hasn't paid me yet. I work remotely, so we don't see each other often. Granted, he hasn't always been this bad, but he always paid me later than he was supposed to. This year, however, it got worse as the company started doing badly. I'm an understanding person, but what irritated me more than anything was how I would have to ask him why I'm not paid instead of him informing me that things are bad and will salary be delayed. So I started planning my exit plan. We also had a big project that we were working on and was supposed to be presented for the clients. Come presentation day, I don't show up, he texts and calls and I ignore him. Then later that day, I emailed him my resignation. I thought I should make him feel what he has made me feel for months. And the next one is a petty revenge story and it starts like this. I'm a healthy-looking 55-year-old male, but I have a degenerative nerve disorder and ataxia, I'm not sure, balance issues, so I have a very hard time walking. I pull into a handicap spot at the grocery store, put my placard up and get myself out of the car. A very angry person about my age runs up to me screaming about how I am stealing a handicapped spot from someone who needs it. As he went on, I pulled out my walker and started walking to the store as he continued making a scene. As I walked to the store, a cop who just happened to be there asked what happened. I just told him, "Some people don't get it," and pointed to my walker and went about my business. About 30 minutes later, I came out of the store and noticed a guy was getting a field sobriety test. I sat in my car and watched as he eventually got arrested. Maybe next time he will keep his mouth shut. And the next one is titled Entitled Tales. My mom recently told us a story I wanna share with you guys. My mom was telling her boyfriend about our neighbors and I have now been reminded of the dreaded pink robe. Pink Robe was named such because just about every morning she stood on her front porch, surveyed the street, smoked like 3 cigarettes, all while wearing nothing but a pink robe and matching pink slippers. No one liked Pink Robe. Pink Robe was a witch. I never made eye contact with Pink Robe because I heard giving demons attention would make them stronger. Some tales about Pink Robe and her husband, we will call him Jackass, who never matured past the age of 6. Pink Robe threatened to get the dogs next door to her put down for barking too loud. This happened multiple times. I hung out at the house next door a couple days a week. The dogs never barked until you reached the front porch, well-trained guard dogs, and could be silenced with one word from their mom until you entered the house. They were noisy if they didn't know you and you were in their house, but after about 2 weeks of hanging out there, they knew me and my sister well enough to not bark at us. Her husband trespassed in our backyard in the middle of the night 2 weeks after we moved in. She threatened to report us to the police when my mom came out with a firearm aimed at the intruder. Her husband claimed he was inspecting our backyard, that is BS, and hence his nickname Jackass. Jackass somehow got a key to the neighbor's house across the street even after multiple lock changes and would frequently just let himself into their house. He had no rights to the house, the neighbors owned their house. This was not a case of rude landlord, the rude landlord owns the house right next to mine. No, Jackass was letting himself into someone else's property unannounced and uninvited every few weeks. This stopped after the neighbors got a couple of firearms of their own. One of the neighbors' kids said Jackass would go so far as to take food out of their fridge, but I don't know the validity of that part since the parents never mentioned it. In addition, Pink Robe threatened to sue a 5-year-old because his rubber basketball bounced into her garage door. To get the evidence to sue, she had an inspector come to assess the damages. When the inspector showed up, she could not figure out where the ball had damaged. I would bike on the street when going past her house, everyone would, and she yelled at us if we fell onto her driveway. To be fair though, Pink Robe was actually fairly nice to my sister and I. We were quiet and polite and sold GS cookies. We were the only kids allowed to knock on their door without getting screamed at during GS cookie season. Seriously, who yells at a little girl selling cookies? A few times when our Chihuahua got out of the yard, she was the one to catch and return him. This was abnormal for her, since for anyone else's dog she would call animal control on them. But being nice to one family does not excuse being a douchebag to everyone else on the street. The two of them moved away a few years ago, thankfully. The people who moved in are normal, don't smoke in nothing but a rope, don't threaten to sue children or get dogs put down, and overall keep to themselves instead of trespassing on other people's property. To this day, no one knows how they kept getting a key to V&M's place or why they had such an issue with respecting everyone. Either way, they are gone now, and good riddance for that. And yeah, Ripe Stars, if you ever had issues with your neighbors, I would very much appreciate it if you could share your own stories either in the comments or on r/Ripe Stories on Reddit. In addition, I would also appreciate it if you could like the video, because that would help my channel tremendously. Thank you so much in advance, your support is very much appreciated. And with this, we have reached the end of the video. However, if you cannot get enough of my content, please check out my endless playlist, where you can find thousands of hours of content. In addition, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel to not miss any of my daily uploads. Thank you so much in advance, and I hope to see you again tomorrow.